to all the veterans that are on the call. We are very lucky and very privileged to have Joe Rieger with the Elizabeth River Project here with us today to share some information that I think is going to be very beneficial and useful, especially to your clients that have waterfront properties. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Joe. Thank you again for being here, Joe.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. Just pulling up my PowerPoint here to everybody. Can everyone see this? Can everyone see this PowerPoint?
Yep, it's coming up now, Joe.
Okay,
great. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to raise your virtual hand or type it in the chat. I'm monitoring the chat and watching, so please feel free to interrupt us, stop us, and we'll get your questions answered as soon as we can, and then we'll have some time after as well.
Great. Thanks, Tim. Well, thanks for having me today. Happy Veterans Day, and just wanted to give everybody a overview of who Elizabeth River Project is, some of the projects we do, and then how I think some of our programs might be able to contribute to some of your clients and help them as they sell or purchase homes in the future. So a little bit about Elizabeth River Project. We're a nonprofit based out of Norfolk, Virginia. We've been around for about 30 years. I've been with the organization, actually today is my 20th year anniversary, so I've been there for quite a long spell.
Congratulations, Joe.
Hey, thanks, Tim. And our goal is to restore the Elizabeth River to the highest practical extent, working with the government, businesses, and community partners. And so we're a little bit different than other nonprofits, the environmental nonprofits, where we don't go after people and sue them. We do not go after industries. We actually work proactively with industries to carry out projects. We'll cost share projects with businesses and homeowners. We have found that this collaborative model is a much more productive model than a combative or a model in which one goes and tries to sue people into doing projects or carrying out activities. So we primarily work, we exclusively work, I should say, in the Elizabeth River watershed. That includes the four major cities: Norfolk, Virginia Beach, Chesapeake, and Portsmouth. And we carry out the one reason why the Elizabeth River is so notorious for contamination is because this is where the maritime industry was born. The harbor is one of the furthest northern ice-free harbors in the United States. It's a deep harbor, and because of that, industry followed behind as we colonized the area of Hampton Roads. And we see that there's, people use the water around here. It's a commodity. It's a luxury for people and a resource for people to get out and enjoy and recreate. And I think that's, as that drives a lot of home prices also, not only on Elizabeth, but other waterfront homeowners. But the river has gotten a pretty bad name over time. This is a Seinfeld episode where Jerry is talking about to Kramer. You probably have seen this if you're a Seinfeld fan, where he's swimming in the East River and he's talking about the heavily contaminated material in the East River, and then Kramer fires back, well, technically Norfolk has more gross tonnage. So this again goes to, just on a national view, how the Elizabeth River is perceived. And when we started the organization, our executive director, Marjorie Mayfield Jackson, also ran into this, where people said, you'll never be able to make a difference. You can't really change what's happened in the past. And I think a lot of the projects that we have done and we continue to do show that that is not true. And we're actually showing measurable results in the river with improving water quality, improving fish density. We now have seahorses in the river. We just caught about 8. There's going to be a piece on Channel 13 next week about the seahorses in the river, otters, and also the dolphins all over the river. So how this all started was back in 1994. we developed a watershed plan. So the idea is before we went out and did anything, we actually developed a strategic plan that we brought industries, we brought community members, the federal government, the state government, the localities together to come up with a plan that everyone could buy into. Now, not everyone may love it 100%, but the deal is can you live with it? And I think that's something that I've learned over the years, is that you have to compromise, and when you do compromise, both sides win and you can move forward with your plan rather than fighting, trying to fight for a project and not having it implemented. And we've seen a lot of other organizations throughout Hampton Roads try to take this tactic, and it did not work, and it stopped projects. And I think that that's something that, early on in the process, getting stakeholder buy-in is very important to us. We also do a State of the River report card. So some of your clients might ask, oh, well, I'm buying this house on the Elizabeth River. How good is the water quality behind my home? Is it safe for swimming? So this report card that was just finished in 2020 can be found on our website of elizabethriver.org. And the report card goes into each branch of the river. So, those branches I mentioned where you had the Lafayette River running through Norfolk, the main stem running through Portsmouth and Norfolk, the eastern branch running through Virginia Beach and Norfolk and Chesapeake, southern branch through Portsmouth and Chesapeake, and the western branch through Portsmouth and Chesapeake. So you can go online and point to some of these resources to some of your clients who might have an interest in, if they're purchasing a home. Are we seeing improvements in the water quality, which that shows kind of like the past report cards and the current report cards. It'll break it down by the parameter, like dissolved oxygen or contaminants or nitrogen and phosphorus, different things that a homeowner might be interested in. So again, overall, the entire river got a C. The Eastern Branch was one that we focused on for the last 5 years. And we've actually raised that grade from a D to a C. And then in Broad Creek that runs through Norfolk, that Broad Creek was raised from an F to a D. And then Indian River, which I'm sure all of you are very familiar with these areas, Indian River was raised from an F to actually a C. So we saw substantial improvements in water quality over in Indian River. And when we first started, the river was at an F. So because we started in such a poor position, or such a bad position, we were able to show a significant amount of progress over the last 30 years. And everyone's like, well, it's taking you 30 years. What's taking you so long? Well, this river didn't get polluted overnight. This river has been an industrialized river for hundreds of years. And so one can't expect that, you're going to be able to turn that tide that quickly. But we are showing progress. And again, I mentioned the seahorses and the returning, dolphins. We're seeing significant dolphin sightings now, and increases in shrimp, brown shrimp that you actually eat. I'd say this past year was the first time our family ate shrimp out of the river, which was really cool. We eat a lot of other things out of the river, but never a shrimp. And this past year, we were able to do that. And so here's kind of the progress I mentioned that from the 2010 to 2014. So we kind of like take a range when we evaluate this data. This is data that's reviewed by the people who produce it, both at the academic level and at the state level. We're actually redoing this State of the River as we speak. We had our first meeting this week to start that process. But you can see Indian River and Broad Creek here both got Fs along with the Eastern Branch. And you can see that improvement that I mentioned from a D, F to a D in Broad Creek. And Tim, that's over there by Fleet Park. I know that you know that, but that's we've improved that area along with the Indian River from an F to a C, and then also the Eastern Branch. So again, that 5-year focus on that particular branch really did show a result in improvement. So we've had significant progress over the years with improved water quality with the seahorse that I showed here, along with number of otter sightings, and also the dolphins returning to the river. One thing that we've been pushing significantly is the reduction of people actually picking up after their pets. This has been one of the things that we found in the Eastern Branch is that the reason why there's a restriction on swimming is due to bacteria, and a lot of people think that bacteria is from sewers and or overflows from like HRSD. But when we were working with HRSD on some tracking of where does the waste actually come from, we found that pet waste was a #1 source for bacteria in the river. And one of the things that we've also found is that when people are out walking their dog, they are shamed into picking it up. So they typically pick it up when they walk their dog, and that's where a lot of the focus has been is pick up after your pet. One of the things that homeowners don't frequently do is pick up in their backyard, and that's really where we see significant loadings to the water is when people are not picking up in their backyard. We've also see sites where we see significant erosion. So some of these are construction sites. Some of them we see eroding shorelines. And this bare area gives way to sediments making it to the water. And when these sediments make it to the water, we get this like chocolate milk color that you see here, which is not great for the river at all because it reduces the amount of light that reaches the bottom and reduces productivity. One thing that we have been working on is through our homeowner program, which I'm going to talk about here briefly, is we're able to provide a cost share to homeowners to address any ongoing shoreline erosion on their property. And that cost share allows us to do actually the design, the permitting, and the construction for the homeowner. So it's turnkey and that they don't have to go to one contractor to do the design, one contractor to do the permitting, and then one contractor to do the construction. Another thing that we have actually seen with homeowners is that there's this big move, especially in the springtime, to get out and fertilize your lawn. And we have a program with Virginia Beach where we actually go out and we do soil samples of people's lawns to look at what the soils don't have enough of. And typically, when we go out to do these soil samples, what we find is that there's plenty of nitrogen and phosphorus in people's lawns. And typically, the types of fertilizers that you find, the pelletized fertilizers you find at Home Depot or Lowe's, are primarily loaded with nitrogen, maybe a little bit of phosphorus, but mostly nitrogen. So in most situations, homeowners' lawns do not need those two nutrients. What they actually do need are two other things, which are change in pH. So a lot of times we'll find high or low pH, and we can actually add material to the lawn, or the homeowner adds it, and it actually opens up the nutrients that were locked up because the pH of the soils were wrong. And then also adding organic material, things like compost to the lawn. These are all new approaches to lawns. So people, they're just used to adding fertilizer that they buy at Home Depot or Lowe's, but they're actually wasting their money when they add it typically because they have plenty of nitrogen and phosphorus. It's just that they don't have these other elements that the grasses need to grow. So we're able to go out and do these soil tests and make recommendations to homeowners about what they can do to get the greenest lawn they would like without adding a bunch of nutrients to it.
Hey,
and
Joe.
then, yeah.
What is the best way for people to get information on this fertilizer situation? Is it on the website? Is there a link?
Yeah.
Is it a
At
test?
the end, I'll have a link, but you go to elizabethriver.org under Riverstar Homes, or you go to riverstarhomes.org. Either one of those will get you there. This program that we have for the fertilizers, Tim, it's sponsored by Virginia Beach. So we only have it in the Virginia Beach watershed, unfortunately, because that's part of our contract with Virginia Beach. But we can, if you have homeowners that have questions about this, they can go onto the website, and they can call us and we can give them some guidance as to where they can send their soil sample, and we can help them interpret that also.
Okay, thanks, Joe.
Yeah, for Virginia Beach, we actually do site visits. We'll come out to the homeowner's property, we'll take the sample, we'll send it off, we'll get the analysis complete, we'll write up a little plan for the homeowner, and then we'll send it to them and then encourage the homeowner to implement it. Unfortunately, we do not have funds for implementation, but what we can do is tell the homeowner exactly where they can purchase the materials, exactly how much to put on their lawn. And I'll tell you, it's, you know, I had in my neighborhood when we used to do it in Norfolk, and so we kind of did a test plot here in Roland Park in Norfolk. And my neighbors thought I was crazy, like, oh yeah, we're gonna add compost in this, and they had the greenest lawns after it, and they bought into it. They were like, we had no idea. So it's just a different mindset from what we have been told. You know, I mean, it's, you don't see commercials for compost and pH adjustment materials for your lawn, but you see a ton for adding pelletized nutrients to your lawn in the springtime, especially. So, and then also I'll just say chemical pollutants. So pesticides, we encourage homeowners not to use pesticides out. You know, a big one, which I think everyone jumped on board with, is like the mosquito stuff that everyone called, you know, they call it these mosquito guys. They come out and spray. So some things with that, those are not, a lot of those chemicals that they use are non-target, or they target everything, right? So when they may be killing mosquitoes, they're killing everything else too. So they're killing the important things that actually eat mosquitoes also. So one thing we've always encouraged homeowners to do is, one, make sure you have no standing waters in small containerized in containers. You know, a lot of people think that the mosquitoes come from the marsh that's out back. That's actually, there's probably 2 species of mosquitoes that are very rare. Most of the mosquitoes that we're getting in our neighborhoods and throughout Hampton Roads are non-native mosquitoes brought from South America that live in containers, and they love containerized. Small amounts of water can allow them to reproduce. So again, trying to reduce those types of things rather than spraying your whole backyard with these chemicals it can be very helpful and save you money also. Medicines are another one, which, you know, we know people are not applying medicines, but the thing is that a lot of people flush medicines down the toilet, and then when it gets to Hampton Roads Sanitation District, they do not filter that out. So pharmacies throughout the area. So we encourage people to, if you do a Google search, usually somewhere in Hampton Roads, they have these where you can bring them back and turn them in. Flooding. Now, this is a hot one. I know that you all have run into this in the past. So rainfall is increasing in our area, along with what we're calling sunny day flooding. What happens is we're seeing, and during these flood events, significant inputs of pollutants into the water during storm events. And so on your right-hand side, this is an example of you know, a home. It was interesting. This home the day before ended up fertilizing their lawn. We got a flood, and then all that nitrogen and phosphorus went right into the river. So, you know, on the right-hand side, in the left, this is actually my backyard, and we're really close to the water. And one of the things that I try to be cognizant about, along with the neighbors, is going back to what I had mentioned about cleaning up after your pet in the backyard. So people always clean up after the pet when they're walking, but when these floodwaters come into the backyard, all it takes is a couple of areas where your dog has gone that can contaminate the water with high bacterial loads. So again, just trying to clean up and doing and keeping that in mind, and encouraging people to pick up after their pets in their backyard. ODU, we've been working with ODU on a number of projects, but one is to look at how much, what's called loading, like how much material is going into the water during these flood events. And there's significant amounts, especially nitrogen and phosphorus, that cause these algal blooms in the summertime that you may have seen. And then the lawn practices responsible lawn practices play an important role here. And that goes back to, like, you know, if you are going to fertilize your lawn, you know, look at the flood report for the area if you're on the water. Don't, you know, if it's going to rain make sure that you're sweeping all the fertilizer off the sidewalk if you're doing that, because it all ends up in the storm drain. Now, our Riverstar Homes program does have some opportunities for homeowners to participate with this. And, you know, if this is more with like staining water in people's lawns. So a lot of lawns we have found do not, the water does not soak into the ground. So we can come out and we can put in dry wells, which are basically wells that bring the water down into the ground, and or rain gardens, which are basically vegetated type of areas that can be planted, and those areas can then soak up the water. Now, to stop this kind of flooding, there's not a lot out there, to be honest with you. You know, it's really difficult to stop this type of flooding, and that's why we're starting to see, you know, different plans within different cities where they're trying to move people to higher grounds and or come up with alternative flood prevention measures. In Norfolk, they're looking at a number of wall structures to potentially stop some of this flooding. But a lot of those structures will only be used during significant storm events. So not that during the sunny day flooding that we see, only during major hurricanes or nor'easters would those gates be closed to prevent significant flooding to the city. So, you know, in the next, 30 to 40 years, the landscape of Hampton Roads will look much different than what we see today. And here's a little bit about the lawn practices. So these are the things that I mentioned where we do the compost and also some of the application of aeration. I forgot to mention that aeration is very important also for homeowners. And then the soil samples that I mentioned, that this is all on our website, on that website on riverstarhomes.org. But you can find information about if you wanted to do your own soil sample or encourage some of your clients to do those also. So some common things that, and I'm hitting on the lawns pretty significantly here, only because it's typically a topic that is with homeowners a very of significant interest. You know, I mean, we've been taught that we need green lawns with, straight corners, and that anything that grows higher than a couple of inches looks messy. So, some things we've encouraged, especially with homeowners along the water, is to add back areas with native vegetation that grows a little higher, that actually prevents shoreline erosion. But in the areas where you have typical lawn areas, heavy compacted areas are something that we run into, where we have seen that when areas get significantly compacted, you find that you have bare areas that develop that then cause, during storm events, runoff to the river with the sediments going in, and that can be taken care of with aeration. Annual aeration is something that we encourage people to do. High levels of phosphorus, and again, a lot of that comes down to some of the application of fertilizers or improper use of fertilizers onto the property. The low organic matter. So this is where it comes into adding the compost I mentioned. So it has limited nutrient availability, and also it having this organic matter allows grasses to have a higher capacity for holding water. So during drought situations, that they're not dying out. And we see that a lot of people love their fescue. Fescue is not the grass for Hampton Roads. St. Augustine, Bermuda, those types of grasses are the better grasses to use, because it is really hard to get fescue. I'm from Ohio. I've been here 20 some years now. Fescue's for Ohio, not for Virginia. But trying to convince homeowners of that change can be significant. And then this is this acidic or basic. So this is the pH element I mentioned. And because of that, that limits the nutrient. If you have a high or low pH in the grasses, then that can reduce the amount of uptake of those nutrients. And then weeds. So the weed one's an interesting one. The best way we recommend homeowners take care of this is really to plant a pretty aggressive grass, which would be something like St. Augustine or Bermuda. You get a lot of weeds mixed in, particularly with fescue and other types of grasses. So again, those are grasses that we think that people should try to stick away from if possible. Let's see. Practices also, I'll just mention here is like, you know, we find a lot of people not only mowing straight to the edge of the river, like you see here, and when that happens, the root structure isn't enough to hold in the banks. And so in this situation, this homeowner, this is actually on Indian River, next to the Indian River Bridge that you can see in the background. So this was a property owner that continuously mowed down to the edge of the marsh, and as a result had failure of the banks, and we came in and put a living shoreline in front of this, which basically stopped that ongoing erosion, and then behind it planted a buffer area with native plants. So, you know, that area ended up looking more wild, right? So you're looking at anywhere from, you know, 2 to 3 feet tall in a span, in a strip along the edge of the river. That might have, that one was probably about 10 feet from the edge of the bank, but it stopped their erosion and they stopped their land loss. This is something we run into a lot with homeowners who are losing their property, and homeowners do not want to lose their property. So it's a, you know, it's kind of like I mentioned before, it's this give and take where the homeowner may not want to put in a living shoreline or a buffer, but do they want to continue to lose their property? And most of the time, homeowners are willing to go that, you know, put these types of structures in to stop the loss of their property. And we have good examples at other homeowners that we can show homeowners that it actually works. And we also have other projects we've done at larger scale that we can show people, like over at the Hermitage or other areas around Norfolk, where we can point to where they're larger scale projects, and a lot of times in more high energy areas, you know, areas that get a lot more wind energy, wave energy. And so it gives the homeowners a peace of mind that it's actually going to work, and that a bulkhead, which a bulkhead now is very hard to get replaced or installed, that a bulkhead is not the choice for the homeowner. So the one thing that goes with this is a property that we did actually on the Lafayette River with the compost. So the benefits for some of the aeration and topsoil that we have is it's a low release nitrogen. So it's again doing it at a very slow rate. It provides the bacteria and the fungi that's needed to help with breaking down grasses. I mean the dead grasses, you know. So like when you mow, we encourage people to mow back into their lawn and not to bag the material. And then also to work on, you know, raking that material out to get the largest spread across the property as possible. And so these are techniques that have worked very well with homeowners, and we've seen that that this application can show great success in, you know, especially the greening of the grasses, but also the longevity, so that you don't have burnout or die out of those grasses over time. And you know, the weed control, one thing I can say is that some of the things that we've encouraged homeowners to do is put down corn gluten, which is, you can actually buy that at Home Depot or Lowe's, but that material actually cuts down on the number of weeds that will come up in the yard, and it's a non-toxic material that you can add to your yard once a year, and it basically is a emergent which prevents that grass prevents weeds from popping up in the next year. Let's see. And the one thing that we also, you know, reducing pesticide applications. A lot of people actually were really surprised, but it was great that not a lot of people actually use this around the water. But I think the biggest one comes down to the when we were looking at the mosquitoes. Mosquitoes can be, the significant source of people, though it has nothing really to do with grass. The application of herbicide or pesticides for reducing the presence of mosquitoes has been quite high here in Hampton Roads, especially since the onset of the mosquito joes and whatnot. And so, the one thing that we've encouraged homeowners is the right plant for the right place. And so one thing is, we also have, with our Riverstar Homes program, an opportunity to work with homeowners to place in native plants in their lawn. So that cost share program is in actually all the cities, unfortunately, except for Virginia Beach. And Portsmouth. So if a homeowner has an interest in taking an area and converting their lawn into native plants, or a shoreline, or a rain garden, which can soak up rain, we can provide cost share funding for that. And so, this is something that we have installed probably at this point about 250 of these projects throughout the 3 cities. And we've seen great success with them. And we can help homeowners with, again, we do the design. If there's a permit needed, we do the permitting and also the construction. We are doing 4 shoreline projects right now in Chesapeake. And then we are moving into rain garden projects. We have some in Lake Taylor area coming up in the next couple months, and then over in Virginia Beach after the holidays. So we actually install a lot of these over time, over the whole year, and we may plant all of them like in the spring or fall. So if folks have an interest, they can come to us, and we can help them through that process. And so this is
Joe, how's the best way for people to apply for that or reach out to you guys for that project?
Yeah, so down here, this is, so if you go, I'll jump to the end. Barbara Gavin actually is the person who runs the Riverstar Homes program. And they can either email Barbara directly, or you can go and sign up. If you go to our elizabethriver.org website, there's a tab that says Riverstar Homes, and you can apply to first be a Riverstar Home. So first thing you have to do is become a Riverstar Home. And then once you become a Riverstar Home, it allows, it's a menu that pops up that says, are you interested in advice on your shoreline? Or do you have standing water in your backyard? Do you want consultation on rain gardens? Are you interested in, we do have a tree program, so people can pick and choose from trees. The menu, and then if you're in Virginia Beach, you have that lawn, also the lawn evaluation I mentioned. So they can go direct, they can talk to Barbara directly, or they can go online and sign up for the program. And it'll tell you online what that cost share is. So the first thing they'll do is ask them to enter their address. So, they enter their address, and if they're in the watershed, then they say you're eligible to become a Riverstar Home, and it'll let you sign up. If you're not, then it might tell you like, oh, you're in the Lynnhaven system, talk to Lynnhaven River now, because we only work in the Elizabeth. So as soon as it switches over to like the Lynnhaven, then that's where they have their programs to assist homeowners. But again, this is the idea of these rain gardens. I know conceptually I described it, but you have runoff from a parking lot or a building, and typically it would pool in the lowest area. So the idea is that the compacted sediments in those low-lying areas don't allow for infiltration to occur. So you have standing water that causes mosquitoes, that also just homeowners do not like, or businesses. We do a lot of these projects at businesses too. So when that happens, you can go in and you basically remove the poor soils. We'll come in, dig it out, bring in sand and compost, plant the plants out, and then it allows the water to infiltrate into the ground rather than staying on top and flooding an area. We also do rain, what they're called dry wells. So dry wells are the same concept as these, but you're making about 18-inch holes that go down about 3 or 4 foot into the ground. You backfill it with gravel, and then that allows, it's like a straw, if you can imagine. So it's not a planted bed in your yard. It's just these little gravel straws that suck the water down into the ground, and it prevents standing water in one's property. So we also have a cost share for those. And the the thing is we encourage if you can, with new homeowners or homeowners that are getting ready to sell, tell your clients about us. And there's other folks that can help in like the Lynn Haven, that's like Lynn Haven River Now. Chesapeake Bay Foundation does work also, and Portsmouth and Chesapeake also, along with us. We partner with them. But if you have homeowners who are having these types of issues, they can reach out to Barbara and myself, and they can we can answer questions that they may have. We can come out and do site visits. That does not cost anything. So it's actually the program's free up until someone wants to install something, and then at that point, that's when we have the cost share. And typically it's 50-50 cost share up to a certain amount. For like living shorelines, it's 50-50 up to $5,000. So if someone wants to do a shoreline, they have shoreline erosion going on and they want us to help them. If it's a $10,000 project, then we would pay $5,000, the homeowner pays $5,000, and we can do all the design, permitting, and construction on that particular project. So, and then there's some of the other things which I really didn't get into here, but some of the other key things that we work on is cleaning up the contaminated sediments in the river. So I mentioned early on that we had contamination on the bottom of the river. We have implemented 2 significantly large cleanup projects in the southern branch. One we completed and partially completed in 2012, which we dredged out 15,000 cubic yards of contaminated material. And we had high rates of cancer in the mummy chug, which is a non-migratory fish that is found in the southern branch. So that what we have seen over the last 10 years is a decrease in cancer from 50% when we started out to less than 5% now. And then we also recently, working with another partner group, the Living River Trust, we actually saw a project over in Paradise Creek near Craddock, if you're familiar with Craddock. So we ended up coming in there and dredging out material and then adding activated carbon. And the Living River Trust oversaw that entire project, but we're hoping that they're going to see reduced PCB levels, and PCBs are the chemicals that can get in fish and migrate up the food chain into humans. So those 2 projects, we're showing significant improvement with the sediments in the river, which have been it's been a legacy contaminant for years and years and years, primarily driven from old creosote plants, which are the tar that you see on some of the telephone poles around the area. So all those poles were produced here in Hampton Roads, and that tar is carcinogenic. So when it goes in the bottom of the river and fishes eat them, it causes cancer in the fish. And so, we're working on trying to clean up those areas. And we not only, I guess what I was just trying to say is, we not only work with homeowners and businesses, but we also work on larger scale projects like cleaning up contaminated. And it's like this wildlife habitat, working to increase habitat through providing more defense against sea level rise. A recent project we worked with the city of Norfolk on was the Ohio Creek project, which is over in Chesterfield Heights. So we worked with the city and their contractor to design that shoreline, and that project was a $125 million project that was carried out with some HUD funding that the city received a number of years ago. And so we also get opportunities to partner with localities. We're partnering with actually Virginia Beach right now on some shoreline work up by Woodstock and Woodstock Cove area. So there's a significant project that the city of Virginia Beach is taking on, and we're contracted to be a consultant on that to help design what goes into those areas of the river. So I didn't want to leave you with the idea that, you know, we just worked on these small homeowner projects, but we also have a real interest in working with businesses. We have a Riverstar business program, along with, you know, larger restoration and cleanup projects in the area. And so, as I mentioned, you can, if you, Barbara was actually could not make the meeting today, but she is the person who oversees the Riverstar Homes program. So if you have questions about that, you can reach out to Barbara at her email here, and or if you have clients that are interested in signing up for a Riverstar Homes program, they can sign up at this email that you see here, which is our main website for Elizabeth River Project. So with that, if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer some questions.
If you want to raise your hand or type in the chat, or just go ahead and unmute yourself. Anyone have any questions for Joe? All right, I put a couple of things in the chat with some links that Joe referenced. If anyone does have any more questions, please feel free to reach out to us at training, and we'll get you in touch with Joe and his firm or his association, and get you growing and cleaning up the river with your clients. So thank you, Joe. I really appreciate you being here, sharing the information. I shot you a personal email, and then you also brought up something about baseball, and I was like thinking bigger. Maybe we should be putting some cornmeal out in the
Yes.
baseball fields, but I don't want to attract the geese either. So I'm not sure that that's a good idea. So we'll talk about that.
Okay.
All right, so if no one's got questions, thank you all for being here. If you're joining me for business planning tips, I'll see you in about 10 minutes over on that channel. Thanks, everybody, and have a great day.
Thanks, Tim.
Thanks, Joe.